join me in welcoming Gabriel, who leads the global community for Saastock, a leading conference and global community for SaaS leaders. He started his career by connecting international organizations with London's tech scene, leading startup community events, mentoring and working with founders in community strategy. At Saastock, he's developed startup initiatives, a global movement in over 200 cities with chapter leaders. Without further ado, take it away.
There we go. Thank you very much. So I'll start by sharing my screen and saying hi to everybody. Thank you so much for having me today. This is so exciting to me because last year I had the opportunity to make it to the actual physical summit for the very first time. It was perfect timing as I was actually in San Francisco for 3 weeks and we were doing a conference there. So I got so inspired and it was so nice to meet so many like-minded people. And I actually think it was probably the room with the nicest people I've ever met. So I really wanted to get to speak. And it's 1 year later. It's not exactly how we imagined, but I'm so honored to be here. So thank you very much for that. Today, I'm going to talk about keeping up with a fast-paced community during the downturn. When I started working on my talk, I got thinking, so what is our role as community builders? What do we do? When I'm asked what I do professionally, sometimes I don't know what to say myself. If it's by someone who doesn't really understand what we do or the work that we do. So I'm a product builder, I'm a strategist, I'm a marketing professional, I'm a growth professional. You can keep going. The reality is, I think that when you're a community builder, you have to be a bit of everything. You have to be jacks of all trades. But what makes us community professionals and community builders? In my view, I believe that we are enablers, we are connectors, and we are facilitators. We play a great role in creating opportunities and facilitating the right environment for connections to happen. We challenge ourselves to make it work. And if we are like the architects putting the jigsaw pieces together, connecting the dots. But I think sometimes we need to be reminded why we do that. So why do we do this? About 5 years ago, I was running programs to connect aspiring entrepreneurs into London's startup scene. One day, I was briefed by a European embassy who wanted to bring a group of students from their universities into London for a business trip. My brief was, you need to inspire them to be startups, to be entrepreneurial. So I prepared this presentation that I thought would fascinate them and talk about the great London entrepreneurs who became unicorns and the networking heroes of the cities and like everyone involved. At the end of the event, there were probably about 25, 30 students. So I asked them, how many of you would actually want to start your own startup? And probably about 6, 7 raised their hand. To my surprise, a few weeks later, I got contacted by the person from the embassy, by my contact, and he wanted to grab a coffee with me. When we had the coffee, he just told me that by being in that room, he got so inspired that he decided to stop what he was doing. He quit the embassy, and he decided to start his own business. How amazing is that? I think moments like that, when you know that you've impacted someone's life, hopefully for the better, is what drove me to dedicate my work to create serendipity. And I believe that that's why we do it, to create serendipity, accelerate opportunities, and build human connection. Now, I refer to fast-paced community. So what is a fast-paced community? It's not a group of individuals running fast, but what I define as a fast-paced community is when you work with industries that are constantly evolving, that are shaping global changes, that are growing rapidly. So 2 years ago, I started working with Saastock. Up until this year, we have been delivering physical conferences all over the world, but to bring together executives, founders, investors, and to help them get more traction, grow, and scale. To give you an indication, so our industry that we're bringing together is software as a service. And I wanted to give you an indication of how fast growing is this market. So I have some mind-blowing facts about SaaS that you might or might not know. A mid-market company of, let's say, 100 to 1,000 employees uses around 185 SaaS applications. But if you actually consider the person to add connections, the number expands all the way to more than 4,000. And for an enterprise with more than 1,000 employees, it can go all the way from 288 to 21,000 relationships per person, 2 apps. this is incredible. In terms of market growth, since 2008, the market has grown from 5.5 billion to 157 billion, which is a massive growth. And it's expected that by the year 2023, it's going to be $623 billion. That's a super fast growth, but at the same time, it's because everything cloud is taking over software. And especially years like this year, we're realizing that we need to move everything that we had in-house into software. So it's what makes the market keep growing. From 2016 to 2019, in only 3 years, the funding, just in terms of funding, in Europe rose from $2 to $5 billion, and in the US from $15 billion to $20 billion, which is also there's a lot more opportunities, a lot of funding. And if you look at only one single sector, the marketing, there's nearly 7,000 SaaS products in the market to serve that sector. So that's what makes a fast-paced community. So you can imagine, as a community that delivering the conferences, we had an incredible year last year in 2019. We were able to deliver conferences all over the world, from our Dublin conference, which is the flagship one, to all of these territories. This is what my year looked like. And on top of that, we started an initiative that became a movement in the shape of local chapters, with local influencers in SaaS running their own Saastock events in their own cities. We followed models of amazing communities like Startup Grind, where they have literally expanded to more than 600 cities, and the impact they had is really high. So our conference and events have created so much impact. And then 2020 got here. What do? It's been a devastating year for physical conferences. Our industry is not software. Our industry is the industry of events. So we might work with the software, but I think, as you can imagine, it's time to play a different game. So what happens when the channels you connect with your community get broken? Take our industry, as I was mentioning just now. I think that from March to April this year, our company recorded 0 in revenue. We relied on our sponsors. We relied on our delegates. We relied on everyone around us to keep it going. Our CEO and founder, like most conference CEOs and founders, had to face the toughest times since starting their businesses. We, as a leadership team in our company, we had to find ways to fix this. We don't have a large corporation behind us. We don't have great funding behind the company. We're just a small team who genuinely care about what we are building for the SaaS industry. So rather than doing what most companies would have done, which is cutting corners, cutting on people, waiting for time to pass, we started a transformation that led us to 2 main pivots. And I think that in the bright side, with everything that's happening today, we have gone through the greatest learning of our lives. It's a time when the community needs the builder as much as the builder needs the community. So a lot of you listening would probably identify and hopefully connect with the scenario. So I wanted to share no more than 3 key learnings in that process of transformation, learnings that have been absorbed by myself, by the team, and by everyone in the company, and by a very determined CEO and founder. So what are those learnings? They might seem a little bit trivial, but I think that they really helped us go through these times. Learning number 1 is revisit your purpose, live and breathe it. It might sound a little holistic and perhaps not actionable enough, but on the very first step we took at the beginning of Q2 was doing a strategic meeting where we even involved coaches to help us. The very first thing that we had to nail down was, why do we exist? Because we don't exist so that we can run conferences. We exist for a reason that we needed to remember. After some time jotting it down in Post-its and brainstorming, we realized that our key purpose, our key goal, is to make a real difference to the lives and companies in the SaaS community. That not only helped us see it all in perspective, but it motivated the whole team to find solutions and to work together better to achieve it. At that point, we didn't hear of major conferences going online in how they did that process. So it was all a little unfamiliar to us. We realized that from having a clear purpose, the words, events, physical events, they were never actually part of that purpose. And so then we were prepared for the first pivot, which meant that we had to find a way to put the conference together online, as many have done it amazingly as well. But we fought really hard to build something unique and amazing to try and keep the vibe from our main event. Physical events will never be able to be recreated online fully, but we can get as close as possible. So we prepared, and we were able to recreate our online conferences. And within 3 months, we did our first remote conference where we had more than 30 speakers. We had more than 60 speakers, more than 30 partners, and nearly 3,000 attendees. This was a pivotal, let's say, this paved our way to the next stages of our transformation. The second learning is build an environment suitable for collaboration. When you're in survival mode, we need to build and create as much collaboration as possible. One example came from our local chapters. At the start of the year, we were expanding our community chapters to nearly 30 cities globally in the first year since we launched it. The big issue is that most of those community builders are themselves founders, they are CEOs, they own their businesses, and we had to stop all the chapters. We had to give them time to breathe, time to deal with what we were all dealing with, and so we had to stop the whole initiative. But we needed to keep building momentum, and for that, you need thought leadership. Our community builders are our thought leaders, on top of the speakers that we invite to our event who are influencers. And so to keep going, we had to build a better environment, more suitable for collaboration. So I called the European city leaders, where we have more presence, for a Zoom coffee hour. We started literally kind of going through ideas, what can we do to keep the momentum? And we managed to put together a collaboration which became the first independently organized collaboration with 12 European cities and their community builders organizing the whole content for the event. And within 3 weeks, we managed to bring 1,000 people together to the event. So I think it's incredible what you can achieve when you open yourself to collaboration. And the second side of this learning is that when in those times, your stakeholders can become your most valuable assets and sources for strategic partners. As we started moving to this new model and we had to get new tools, new software, we had to work differently with the production companies. We had to start working on the relationships rather than the contracts. So we were focusing on the partnerships and how we can benefit each other and support each other. We deliver our events in a great platform where actually we build that kind of relationship with them to make it happen. And at the same time, even the production company who worked with us for the main conference, we involve them in the actual production, and as a result, they have benefited them by meeting new conferences and growing themselves. As community builders, we can't stop doing what we're doing, even in the toughest times. At the end of this mess, I think that we would only be remembered by what we did and not by what we didn't. The third learning, is move fast while validating with your community. The second part of our pivot, since COVID hit us, is one that we're still in the middle of. And I wouldn't say even middle, we're only starting. As we get developing the online conferences from the first one in June, my focus as leading community was to look what else we can do with the community. We had to move fast. We had to keep surviving. So we realized that we needed to look at our business model and how vulnerable it can be when it's based on single transactions, when it's based on single tickets and single sponsorships. So we started a journey by doing a lot of customer research, interview calls, service to the community, getting inspiration from other communities. We looked up at communities like Mind the Product that build an incredible infrastructure to kind of help all the product managers and product developers to get together. And we looked at other communities like Sales Hacker that went from media into actually more community driven. And so we started looking at the different channels that we could work on. Validation is key to move forward. But we didn't have the luxury to spend months and months doing this. So I followed techniques from simple kind of startup focus groups, books and entrepreneurs, so such as then in Startup by Eric Ries, and I reread The Mom Test, which is a book that I recommend to anybody because it helps you when you're building a product or validating an idea, but it translates to the work we do as community professional. It gives you a framework to get to the right people and not pitch a product, but actually work collaboratively with them and come up with ideas. So I've been using that feedback loop, and it helped me get more focused. And as a result, now we're putting together our first membership that we're going to launch next week at our flagship conference online. And it's basically been a mix of all of that validation that we've been doing. It's going to be pretty much translating all of the value that we've been creating in single conferences into smaller chunks that we can deliver over a period of time. So we can keep building those relationships within our community, and we can keep getting more strategic content on the day-to-day, basically. I was then able to get on that execution mode, and yeah, we're getting ready to launch it next week. But what I learned also from that is the product market fit model, which means that when you're validating with your community, you have to think like a startup. Startups strive to find product market fit. I strive to find community market fit. What I mean by that, in contrast to product market fit, is startups look for the right product and the right market. And as it's actually what they need to achieve first in order to scale. We're in that starting point again, but we do have an existing community that we can actually go to. So customer feedback is always crucial to achieve that, and that's what we've been implementing. When changing your channels or your business model, the audience helps you shape the next steps. So what we're launching next week is probably not how it's going to look like in a month's time, when we actually have more people to try and test the membership model that we're launching. My advice is to find the most engaged customers, the most engaged members of your community, and build a feedback plan for product development. I wanted to put this in a little bit more visual. So this is not by any means a textbook framework, but it's more a visualization of the work that I did, and also combining it with the learnings that I've just shared. So I started with the emoji over there, where you start evaluating your channels and your models, but it's important to keep the purpose in mind, because you can start narrowing them down. What channels can we use? What platforms? Then list your customer personas. What?
I'm so sorry to interrupt, but you don't have your screen share on. Do you want to get your screen share on, and then we can see what you're talking about work?
Oh, shoot. Okay.
Right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, let's do that, and I'll give you.
So my screen has not been there all the time.
No.
Okay.
It's okay. Yeah. Yep. Let's get that right now, because this is great, and so we want to make sure that we have this.
Okay. Yeah, absolutely. I did have the slides for every single part of the presentation. There we go. So this is a framework that I developed just to help me in that process. So the first step is evaluate the channels and models, but then match them with your purpose. Then you can start listing those channels that you can bring your community on. Then the second part is you reevaluate your customer personas. And the reason I mentioned stakeholders there is because that's when the aspect of collaboration comes. Like, what can we do differently with them? And start drawing a plan. The next part is a part of validation, where you get all the feedback together, you deliver all your customer calls, you get the research, you get to research the industry trends, and then you refine your purpose, your value proposition, and it's a process that keeps that you go back to, and you can keep repeating it over and over again as you develop the product and as you keep it growing. And the process continues. The process will not end until we actually have found the right kind of model that we can transform completely the company into. We're in that process. I'd like to leave you with a site from an author named Walter Isaacson. He wrote a book about the greatest innovators of the digital revolution. In one of his quotes, he talks about collaboration and giving examples how the World Wide Web as we know it, it was a mix of different innovations from different generations, the hyperlink and the internet. As he describes in a different perspective, he mentions and explains how sustained innovation can only occur when people with a variety of talents come together, and ideally in a physical close proximity, where frequent meetings can happen and serendipitous encounters can happen. Let's not just be the catalysts for our communities, but evolve with them with an overarching purpose in mind and a validation framework in place. Purpose, collaboration, validation, I believe, is the starting point to achieving community market fit in the time of a downturn when we need to adapt fast in order to survive. Thank you very much. Can you hear me now?
So great. Yes. Thank you so much for that. I mean, just like you know, I'm learning about all of this too, and like the downturn and the transition. I mean, between you and me, it's been a really wild ride, right? Just to say,
no, it's been, what a year. Oh, it's a pity you couldn't get to see my slides.
I'm so sorry. I really wanted everyone to be able to see that framework, but don't worry, it's okay. We're going to make sure that in the recordings we put everything over, so it'll be perfect.
Oh, absolutely. I'll send you the slides so you can take them forward.
You guys, we have about 2 minutes left. Anyone have any questions that you want to ask or get out there right now? We can get that answered. Let's give everyone a minute. But
sure.
to like kind of just touch on a lot that you said. I mean, this year just could not have gone like any more unexpected. And our CEO, Derek Anderson, spoke at Saastock Remote, which was absolutely wonderful.
Yeah,
great.
Yeah.
3 months to put that on. Like, wow.
It was incredible. I don't know how we achieved that, but it was that kind of teamwork that we were all driven for that one purpose. And well, you can have normally the quarter targets and goals, and they are different according to departments. We unified in one.
It's such a different experience, you know. Like when I started this, I was like, Summit, CMX Summit, in person, live, and then it just as the months came in, you know, it was just no. And then finally reality hit, and I'm like, it's go time, like typing like mad, you know?
I know. I remember at the beginning, you guys were planning to do it hybrid, if it was possible, and then move to completely online, of course, because I mean, things we can't control.
I mean, everything, so many ideas. Okay, we have a couple questions here. So let's take the first one from Lena. So 2020 has been crazy. I'm curious, Gabriel, if there was anything about pivoting this year that ended up being fun or surprising. Oh.
Well, I mean, I think actually the year has been a roller coaster, but as I mentioned, we even like set aside all the crises and all the times. I think it's exciting that we're getting to learn so many new things, and we're getting to work together better. When we saw the actual result of the conference in June, and we got to interact with the people. I used to do a competition in every conference, which I still do, in terms of running the session. And it was actually quite exciting to do it online, and the interaction with the judges worked really well. So I think, I mean, there has been happy moments through all this process. And also, I mean, getting to see the new membership and the new product. We launched the app as a soft launch with a test group, and see it just like in my hands, something that I wouldn't have imagined at the beginning of the year. I think that's really great.
I know, and like we're just virtual event producers now, like another little notch on the belt there, right? Like doing such a great job. Can't wait to see the event next week. You and the team are definitely going to crush it, you know, showing up with what that's truly about. So thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, you're all welcome to join next week, by the way. Plug alert, you're all welcome to join next week. Well, I'll send you links.
But thank you so much. And everyone, be sure to check out some of the other sessions going on the forum stage and club stage, the theater stage, and the forum stage. Check out our booths. Be sure to register for Gabriel's event next week, and we'll see you all soon. Thank you.